Last week, Caitlin Clark stunned the world of women's basketball. But what happened next shocked an entirely different sport: golf. A place where legends are built over decades and where even the greatest athletes struggle to master the game. Yet in a moment nobody saw coming, the WNBA superstar walked onto a professional golf stage and left the entire sport in disbelief. Even golf legend Tiger Woods, a man who has witnessed nearly every incredible moment the sport has ever produced, was left staring at the scoreboard as if something had broken. Because the numbers flashing on that board didn't seem real. 13 under par. Records shattered. And the most unbelievable part? She wasn't even supposed to be there. What began as a simple celebrity appearance at the RSM Classic Pro-Am turned into something nobody expected. Golf tournaments like this happen every year. Professional players show up, celebrities play a few casual holes, fans watch politely, and then everyone goes home. It's normally quiet, relaxed, and predictable. But the moment Caitlin Clark's name appeared on the player list, everything changed. Within hours, tickets that had been sitting unsold for weeks suddenly vanished. Not because of a major PGA Tour star. Not because of a championship matchup. Simply because one basketball player had decided to play golf. The demand was so overwhelming that event organizers were caught completely off guard. Phone lines lit up. Online ticket sites crashed. Security teams had to be expanded. Staff members were called in early. Viewing areas had to be rearranged just to handle the crowds. By sunrise on event day, something golf rarely sees was happening. Fans were already lined up outside the course, many wearing Indiana Fever jerseys and basketball gear instead of the traditional golf attire. Some had flown across the country just to watch her swing a club. One announcer quietly said into his microphone while looking at the packed crowd, "This is not what we planned for." And he was right. The energy around that event felt completely different from anything the tournament had experienced before. For years, professional golf, especially women's golf, had struggled to attract younger audiences. Broadcast numbers had plateaued. Sponsors were cautious. Executives debated endlessly about how to make the sport feel exciting again. Then suddenly, one athlete from a completely different sport walked into the picture and did something no marketing campaign had managed to accomplish in years. She brought attention. She brought curiosity. And most importantly, she brought fans. Originally, the Pro-Am wasn't even scheduled for a major broadcast. It was meant to be a small local stream, something only die-hard golf fans would watch. But when hundreds of emails started pouring in from people asking how they could watch Caitlin Clark play, the organizers realized something was happening. The demand was too large to ignore. Within days, the broadcast plan changed entirely. The event would now be televised. That decision alone told the entire story. A basketball player appearing in a golf event had created enough interest to change a broadcaster's schedule. Before the first swing even happened, another surprising decision was made. The organizers paired Caitlin Clark with the current world #1 in women's golf. The idea seemed simple: put the biggest name in women's basketball next to the biggest name in women's golf and see what happens. What happened was something nobody could have predicted. The Pro-Am instantly became one of the most watched events of its kind in recent memory. Then came the moment that truly broke the internet. Caitlin Clark stepped up to the tee box with thousands of people watching in complete silence. There were no visible nerves, no hesitation, no dramatic build-up. Just a driver in her hand and a calm expression. She took her stance, looked down the fairway, and swung. The sound of the ball striking the club echoed across the course. Clean, sharp, and powerful. The ball soared through the air and traveled an astonishing 270 yards before landing perfectly in the center of the fairway. The crowd didn't just cheer. They erupted. Phones flew into the air as fans tried desperately to record what they had just witnessed. Some spectators simply stood there shaking their heads in disbelief. Even Tiger Woods reportedly raised his eyebrows before laughing and quietly saying, "That might be the best first swing I've ever seen from a non-pro." That one comment spread across the internet like wildfire. Within minutes, social media exploded. Golf fans, basketball fans, and sports analysts everywhere were sharing the clip. Soon, even NBA superstar Stephen Curry joined the conversation, joking online that Caitlin Clark might actually be better at golf than he was. The post immediately went viral, pushing Caitlin Clark golf to the #1 trending topic worldwide. Major sports networks quickly jumped on the story. Analysts began comparing her crossover athletic ability to legendary figures like Michael Jordan. Headlines appeared across sports media claiming that Caitlin Clark had just changed golf forever. But what made the performance truly shocking wasn't just one great swing. It was what happened throughout the round. Hole after hole, Caitlin Clark wasn't simply surviving the course. She was reading it, adjusting to wind direction, changing angles, making strategic decisions like someone who had played the game for years. Golf professionals and caddies watching nearby began exchanging surprised looks. One veteran caddy later admitted that she was processing the course faster than some players he had worked with professionally. The moment that sealed the day came on one of the course's most difficult holes. Most players approach it cautiously, choosing to play safe. But Clark didn't. She attacked it aggressively. Her shot flew straight toward the green, landed softly, and rolled to a stop just inches from the hole. For a brief moment, the commentators were completely silent. Then the chaos began again. Applause echoed across the course. Cameras rushed to capture every angle. Even Tiger Woods began clapping. By the end of the round, the scoreboard told the story that nobody believed was possible. 13 under par. A new Pro-Am record. When reporters later asked Tiger Woods about what he had witnessed, his response carried enormous weight. He described it as one of the cleanest and most confident swings he had ever seen from someone outside professional golf. Coming from a legend who rarely hands out compliments, that statement meant everything. Yet what impressed experts even more were the smaller details hidden between the highlight moments. At one point, Clark faced a tricky lie near the rough. Instead of panicking, she studied the ball for a few seconds, switched clubs, and executed a controlled fade that landed softly on the green within 8 feet of the pin. The professional golfer she was paired with reportedly looked at her afterward and simply nodded in silent respect. Her driving distance also stunned analysts. A 270-yard drive from someone who had never competed professionally in golf isn't just about power. It requires perfect timing, balance, and technique, skills that most amateur golfers spend years trying to master. Yet Caitlin Clark delivered it effortlessly, in front of a massive crowd and dozens of cameras. By the time the round ended, one analyst summed it up perfectly. What people witnessed wasn't beginner's luck. And the scoreboard confirmed it. Caitlin Clark didn't just show up to a golf event. She walked into an entirely different sport and broke it. It was the natural ability of an elite athlete adapting instantly to a new challenge. The round ended, the final putt dropped, and for a brief moment the course went quiet. But what happened next had nothing to do with golf scores. Within hours, the business world began moving faster than anyone expected. Phones started ringing. Agents started negotiating, and brands that had never once considered women's golf suddenly wanted one name attached to their campaigns. Caitlin Clark. What started as a casual Pro-Am appearance quickly turned into a financial storm. Within days, 3 massive endorsement deals reportedly landed on the table. A golf apparel company wanted her to front a completely new product line. A luxury watch brand saw an opportunity to connect with a younger sports audience they had been struggling to reach. And a global beverage company wanted Clark as the centerpiece of a new campaign about performance under pressure. Combined value? Over $15 million. Think about that for a second. One weekend on a golf course, not even as a professional competitor, and Caitlin Clark generated more money than many WNBA players earn over entire careers. It wasn't just surprising. It was almost unheard of. But the money was only part of the story. Event organizers began releasing numbers that stunned even the people running the tournament. Clark's appearance alone generated more revenue than several previous events combined. Merchandise sales surged overnight. Broadcast ratings spiked far beyond expectations. Viewers who had never tuned into a women's golf broadcast suddenly showed up in massive numbers just to watch her swing. Golf networks that normally saw quiet Sunday audiences were suddenly seeing prime-time level viewership. Sponsors noticed immediately. Companies that had spent years debating whether women's sports were worth the investment suddenly started asking the same question: how fast can we get involved? One marketing executive reportedly said something that perfectly captured the moment. "We've spent years trying to find someone who can move the needle in women's sports. She moved it in a single afternoon." And that was the part that shocked analysts the most. Normally, an athlete builds their brand slowly. Years of competition, championships, media exposure, and consistent results gradually raise their market value. Even the biggest stars usually spend seasons building that kind of influence. Caitlin Clark skipped the entire process. One appearance, one round, one scoreboard, and suddenly the entire sports business ecosystem started reorganizing around her. Sports marketing analysts admitted publicly that they had never tracked anything quite like it. Normally, brand deals require weeks or even months of internal approvals, legal reviews, and marketing strategy meetings. With Clark, companies were moving in days. Some reportedly moved in hours.
Why?
Because brands weren't just buying a golfer. They weren't even buying a basketball player. They were buying attention. Wherever Caitlin Clark goes, millions of fans follow. That kind of built-in audience is one of the most valuable assets in modern sports marketing. Companies understood that attaching their brand to Clark meant instant exposure to a generation of fans who were already paying attention. And the deals themselves were structured differently than traditional endorsements. The apparel company didn't just want her face in advertisements. They wanted her creative input. They wanted her involved in designing a golf line inspired by her playing style and personality. That level of collaboration is usually reserved for athletes with decade-long careers inside a sport. Clark had been playing golf publicly for one weekend. The luxury watch brand's reasoning was even more revealing. Their marketing team had historically focused almost entirely on male professional golfers. Female athletes had never been part of their campaign strategy. Until now. After Clark's Pro-Am performance, internal data showed something unexpected. The audience watching her clips was younger, more diverse, and far more engaged than their typical campaign reach. Within 6 days, they signed her. Then came the beverage company's campaign idea, which might have been the most interesting of all. They didn't want to position her as a golfer. They wanted to position her as something bigger. Their campaign concept focused on the idea of performing under pressure regardless of the environment. The message wasn't about golf swings or scorecards. It was about someone who walks into any arena, any sport, any challenge, and competes without hesitation. One athlete. Multiple sports. Zero fear. It turned out that message was exactly what brands had been searching for. The business world hadn't just noticed Caitlin Clark after that weekend. It had pivoted toward her. And while sponsors were racing to secure deals, something else was happening at the exact same time. Something quieter. Something people noticed almost immediately. The voices that had spent the entire WNBA season talking about Caitlin Clark suddenly disappeared. No posts. No congratulations. No reactions. Just silence. Fans noticed it instantly. Comment sections filled up with questions and speculation. Some people pointed out the contrast between the golf world's excitement and the sudden quiet from some of Clark's most vocal critics. LPGA players were congratulating her, praising her competitiveness, and celebrating the moment. Meanwhile, several familiar voices from the basketball world had nothing to say. And that contrast became its own story. One fan comment summed it up perfectly. "Funny how everyone had something to say all season, but now they've gone quiet." But the response from the golf world couldn't have been more different. One of the top players on the LPGA walked up to Clark after the round, smiled, and told her something simple but powerful. "You belong here." Those 3 words carried weight. Because they didn't come from a fan or a commentator. They came from someone who had spent years fighting for recognition inside a sport that had often been overlooked. And in that moment, one athlete recognized another. Across sports. Across leagues. Across expectations. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark herself handled the entire situation exactly the way she usually does. Calm, focused, and completely uninterested in the drama. When reporters asked about the reactions and the silence from rivals, she simply smiled and gave a short answer. I'm focused on competing and doing what makes me happy. No complaints. No call-outs. No social media battles. Just competition. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because the moment that truly stunned the sports world came when one legendary voice finally weighed in. Tiger Woods. And what he said made people stop scrolling, rewind interviews, and listen again. Because when Tiger Woods looked at Caitlin Clark's performance and said the sport of golf would explode if she ever took it seriously, the entire conversation changed. And then came the moment that made the entire sports world stop and pay attention. Because when Tiger Woods speaks about golf, people listen. Reporters gathered around him after the event expecting the usual polite comments about a celebrity guest appearance. Maybe something like, "She played well for someone new to the sport." That's usually how these situations go. But that's not what happened. Tiger Woods smiled for a moment, paused, and then said something that instantly changed the conversation. If she ever decided to take golf seriously, the sport would explode. Not she did well for a beginner. Not she has potential. He said the sport would explode. Those words carried weight because they came from the most influential golfer of the modern era. When Tiger Woods talks about the future of golf, executives, sponsors, and players all pay attention. Within minutes, the quote spread everywhere. Sports shows replayed it. Golf analysts debated it. Fans shared the clip across social media. And suddenly the idea that Caitlin Clark might actually have a future in golf didn't sound crazy anymore. Then another piece of information quietly surfaced. Sources at the event reported that Woods had spoken privately with Clark near the clubhouse after the round. It wasn't a long conversation and no cameras caught it. But according to people close to the situation, the discussion included something extremely rare. Tiger Woods reportedly offered her a private training session. For most athletes, that kind of opportunity would be almost impossible to get. Woods is famously selective about who he trains with. His time and knowledge are among the most valuable resources in golf. The fact that he even considered it said everything about how seriously he viewed her potential. And that possibility alone sent the golf world into speculation mode. Imagine the scenario for a second. One of the greatest basketball shooters in history learning the technical precision of golf from the greatest golfer of his generation. It sounded like something out of a sports movie. But the real impact of that weekend went far beyond professional athletes and endorsement deals. Because somewhere far away from the cameras, something else was happening. Young fans were watching. Girls who had never cared about golf before suddenly found themselves replaying the highlights. They watched Clark step onto a course filled with professionals and swing like she belonged there. They saw the crowd erupt when the ball nearly dropped for a hole-in-one. They saw one of the greatest athletes in sports history clap in approval. And a simple thought crossed their minds. Maybe I could try that too. That moment, the inspiration, is something sports leagues spend years trying to create. Millions of dollars go into marketing campaigns designed to bring new fans into a sport. Caitlin Clark did it in a single weekend. Viewers who had never watched women's golf before started saying something that broadcasters dream of hearing. If she's playing, I'm watching. And when athletes from completely different sports started reacting, the momentum only grew stronger. Serena Williams called the performance incredible. Patrick Mahomes commented simply, "She's a monster." LeBron James reposted a highlight clip and added a caption that quickly went viral. "This girl different." When athletes at the top of their own sport start paying attention to someone outside their field, it usually means something bigger is happening. And that bigger picture became impossible to ignore. Because this story was never just about golf. It wasn't even just about basketball. It was about what happens when a rare athlete breaks out of the limits people expect. For years, sports culture has tried to put athletes into categories. Basketball players stay in basketball. Golfers stay in golf. Football players stay in football. But every once in a while, someone shows up who doesn't seem interested in those boundaries. Caitlin Clark stepped onto a golf course for fun. What she left behind was a record-breaking round, millions in sponsorship deals, viewership numbers that shocked broadcasters, and a comment from Tiger Woods that the sport might explode if she ever decided to stay. And the most fascinating part? She never chased that moment. The moment found her. Because when an athlete carries that kind of competitive energy, the kind that makes crowds lean forward and watch, it doesn't matter what sport they step into. People will show up. Sponsors will call. And somewhere, a young fan watching at home will see something they didn't expect. Possibility.